So anyway, what are we talking about tonight, Chris?
So tonight we're going to talk about making your first video game.
Oh
And
yeah,
and
man.
you know, this is one of the things that kind of one of the two or three topics that I started with when I was beginning to make the rounds back in the days when we would remember when you used to have a talk and you would go to multiple user groups, like you might even span our little tri-state area here and go to Delaware's group and go to a group in Lehigh Valley, maybe go visit newjersey.net and our good friend Jess Chadwick, who was here a couple weeks ago, go visit Harrisburg. Even before we all started staying home, I was beginning to make less and less rounds because, well, we were streaming Philly.net. So you only had to do the show once anyway and then just point people to the video. But yeah, this was one of the early topics. And the reason why I remember one year at Philly.net, this was going to be in a room that maybe held about 20. And before I even got to the room, it was already just standing room only inside. And, you weren't supposed to stand at that Malvern MTC because the occupancy in the room was like 18 or something. But
Yeah,
people...
hey, don't say this with Rich on the call.
Yeah.
Don't tell him we stood. We didn't stand. There was
No.
standing room.
No, everybody... What really happened is everybody politely left to get down to the correct occupancy. And so let's just go with that. But it was amazing how many people wanted to see this talk that was called Web Developer by Day, Game Developer by Night. And the idea was that if you were a web developer, you were already a game developer. You just didn't know it. You didn't know that there were libraries and tools and ways that you could go ahead and start building games. So what I'm hoping we do tonight is get started using the Phaser framework, which is just one of many game frameworks, but this one happens to be a JavaScript framework. And start in just a typical web browser, and then eventually, believe it or not, even with these web developer skills, you could publish this game on the Xbox platform, including a game that other people could buy. You don't need any prior approvals or anything for this.
So you're saying, right? We're going to use just our. It depends on who you are coming into the show, right?
Right.
But I've been a web developer in my career. I've got the basic web dev skills, right? I know HTML, JavaScript, CSS. I'm no whiz with those things, but you're saying that I can actually put something on an Xbox.
Yep, that's the plan. That's what we're shooting for. But yes, that's exactly
cool.
What I'm saying.
Yeah.
And
now,
yeah.
Yeah, is this going to be like? I mean, just give us I don't want to be like a downer. Well, this is going to be a game. Like, this is obviously not going to be like a first-person shooter with like super high-res graphics and things like that, right? I mean,
so you could create a game like that and run it, and even for your Xbox console, and then even consider publishing it. You could even do that on the web. There are many tools to do that, and I don't mean just programming tools like we're going to use tonight. The Unity game engine is super popular, and it does have a web export. The Unreal engine is super popular, and it has a web export. And there are web frameworks that are 3D based. One that comes to mind is Babylon JS. We're not going to show that tonight, but it is you can make 3D applications with it. So
wow. That's cool. That's hard. It's hard to believe.
Yeah.
Honestly, like, I mean, I believe you.
Yeah.
But it's like, wow, really? Like, we can do this. So I don't know. Are you ready? Can we get started?
Yeah, we can get started here. So let's see if this works.
Yeah,
Switching over. Everybody can still hear everybody, and everybody can see the screen.
I see it.
And here we are in Visual Studio Code, which I'm going to start in, and we'll see how long we stay here. So. What I'm gonna do is let's just create a new folder. So I heard some beeping there. I don't know.
What was that?
Was that voice?
Sounded like a low battery.
Oh.
I don't know who's low battery.
Like a low battery. I don't know if that went out on the stream. I thought maybe it was. Are you sharing your audio? Maybe it was you. I don't know what that was.
Yeah, I don't know. So
let's move along.
In any case, what I'm gonna do is. I think I want to just create a folder here, and I'm just going to call this code. I haven't logged into this. Clearly, I have not opened Visual Studio Code in a while because it's asking me all kinds of questions. So in any case, you know, if you're used to Visual Studio Code, all I've done is just open a folder. I just opened a plain folder. And what I'm going to do is we're just going to create a web page. So let's do that. The best way for me to do that is
like
just
an
create
HTML page, you mean? Like a web page?
Yeah, just index.html.
Yeah.
And you know, there's a little trick in Visual Studio Code that because do I remember the basic structure of a web page? Oh, I might not. But if I use the Emmet syntax and just put an exclamation mark and hit tab, then there it is. So the first thing that I will need is I'm going to need this framework we were talking about. And let's get a web browser in here so we can just take a look.
Something's going dead here.
Yeah, I don't know if that's... What is that? I don't know.
But listen, I'm going to also make a suggestion, is that if you could maybe make that full screen and bump up your fonts a little bit on the code.
Yeah, and then I want to also get this web browser up here so we can take a look at Phaser.js, which is at Phaser.io. Just because probably I don't know, maybe they couldn't get the name, or there might not have been a .js at the time. And so this is a desktop and they say desktop and mobile HTML5 game framework. Basically, they're a front end for some features that are built into your web browser already. One of them is called Canvas. You may remember when Canvas came out. It was quite a while ago. It was for 2D graphics. And then WebGL is built into our browsers now. And the thing about it is it's like a trip down memory lane for me a little bit because I recall years ago waiting for this stuff to get into all the modern browsers and thinking like someday our browsers will have Canvas and WebGL. Well, it turns out like now our phones all do, you know, so we're long past this being pretty standardized and available. But in any case, it's interesting that it's complaining here. I don't know why. So I actually think it's OBS complaining to me, and I'm not sure why tonight. So in any case, let's take a look. Let's take a look at the code here. So I need the Phaser framework, and one place that I can get that, I can download it from the site, but I actually already have it saved off. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and bring that in here. Let's see. Okay. So it probably would have I like to put JavaScript in a subfolder. You don't have to, but I will. And I'm going to copy.
I think it's a best practice. A lot of people do that nowadays. I like it.
Yeah. And I'm going to copy in a couple files. I don't really need this Phaser.js. I'm kind of just showing you all that this is the full source code. We're going to rely on Phaser min.js.
Sure.
So okay, no problem. Now, what else do we need? We are going to need to bring this code in. So the easiest way to do that is to add it as a script tag. And I think it's pretty common practice to put it at the bottom of your body tag, right? You don't have to. And again, if you have strong opinions about where this stuff goes, it's not that Phaser isn't compatible with it. You can do whatever you need. Now, all that I really need is I need a Phaser. I need something for Phaser to create its canvas. So if you just create a div and you give it some ID, we're going to hand this to Phaser, and we're going to say, okay, Phaser, you take it from here. So let's see, what else are we going to need? Well, we're going to need some place to write our code. So if I say index.js, now I've got a place for us to write code, and I'm going to need to make sure that we bring that into our web page too. Okay. So, but we haven't written any code yet. Now, what I think we'll start with is we need what Phaser calls a game. And let's break down this code here, because there's a lot of, I'm going to go ahead and press enter so we can see this long line of code.
It's not that much still.
Yeah.
Like, I'm waiting, Chris, watching, right? Because one of the things I'm noticing is so far everything you've done has been true to what you said, like dirt simple, right? You haven't done a lot. I keep waiting for you to go, and now I'm just going to add these other 65 files into the solution so that we're all set to go. You know, or
Yeah.
like, well, you know, oh, well, we're just going to put this one little snippet in here, and I'm like, watch this be like a whole page worth of code, and it's not,
Yeah.
right? It's not a lot right here so far. So I'm
Right.
still really impressed with this, right?
And I think we can follow this along. Is what we're telling Phaser to do is create a canvas that's 800 by 600 and
Right.
use this div to do your HTML work. So if we ran this, we could go look in the developer tools and we'd see that Phaser basically got an HTML canvas up and running. And then
Right.
what you do is you tell Phaser the names of 3 functions that you're going to supply to it. Because all game loops in all games, they have a lot in common. Just about every game has a stage where they load their assets or they get ready. This happens in all games. When you're loading up your favorite game on your Xbox or your PC and you see the splash screens come on, and you know, you might remember that you used to be able to like hit enter or hit something and you just skip it. But now you get frustrated because you're like mashing this button and you're saying, why can't I skip the splash screen? And the main reason, you know, somebody who could correct me and say, well, there's other reasons too, but the main reason why is because modern games are loading assets into memory. They're taking that time to load in 3D textures and models and audio. And so that's a common part of game development is get me ready. Because once you're ready to go, you want to be flipping animations, just like, you know, for those of us who are a lot older, remember those flip books where you could watch a cartoon by flipping a book? That's what game animation is it's flip these frames as fast as you can, maybe 30, 60 times a second. And so we want to tell Phaser, here's what we want you to do while you're loading up. Then here's what we want you to do to create the game. And then I'm going to give you a function to tell you what to do every frame of the game. So we have to supply that still. And this is where you're going to start to see code, right?
Well,
So
that's okay. It still seems like a really easy getting started path so far, right?
yeah, yeah. So we need a
still seems
preload.
like-
Yep.
I know you've done some other game development. I mean, that structure, that framework you kind of laid out there. It's very similar to what you do in something that wasn't just web based, but it actually was a game type engine that you were building.
If you're using Unity, you're going to see they have a game loop and they define functions that you can come into. Then they've been around long enough to have come up with lots of different places where you might want to butt into the game loop. So if you're a Unity developer, you'll see pre-frame and post-frame update and live frame, but it just means that they're giving you more entry points. The famous XNA framework, which allowed you to do this very same thing on the 360, had create and load content. It had I used to call it the 4 functions, you know, create, update, load content, and then there was another one which I can't remember now.
Sounds like the CRUD of gaming.
Yeah,
what we call CRUD, right?
Yeah, there's always a loop. There's always a loop. So I need someone to move around in this game. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and write the code, and then we're going to go get the asset. So I declared this Phaser game variable as game. I can use it the rest of the time in here. Now, you might notice another thing I've done here. I'm taking advantage of JavaScript closures, and this is sort of a globalish variable. That's for simplicity of the sample. If you hate that, feel free to stick to const and let and pass these variables around. That is just to keep it super simple, is that I declared this game, it's accessible to preload, and we're going to use game's load function to load a sprite sheet. And then you give the sprite sheet a name. I'm just going to call it the dude. And I haven't made this assets folder yet, so let's go make the assets folder. That's not where I want to make it.
Are you in JavaScript right
yeah,
there?
I didn't mean to, but thank you. I'm going to pull it out. So here it is by itself. And let's go get that file. So off screen here.
There goes Morse code again. I think dude is trying to get out of your computer.
Yeah, it's kind of strange. Where are the code assets here? Okay, here he is. Because I want you all to see what one of these looks like. I just want one. Why can't I grab one? Oh, I wonder, is it complaining about a shift key being stuck? Because it's not letting me grab one of these.
Oh, it does have that sound of like a stuck key.
Yeah, see, it won't let me grab this and paste it.
Something laying on your keyboard, right?
I don't know. I just looked at my keyboard.
Do you have a second keyboard, like nearby or something?
I mean, I do, but it doesn't have... No, it won't let me paste it in. Okay, well, this is what a sprite sheet might look like. And what I want to do is I want to get this into our project here. So let me see if I can figure this out. Okay, so here we go. There it is. It's in the project. And so this is called a sprite sheet. And the reason it's called a sprite sheet is because instead of having a different file for every frame of this character, you put it in one file. And then in a typical game programming engine, you might have to say, how big are each of the sprites in the game sheet? They're usually the same size, usually. And so you might say, okay, you know, it's let's take a look at what our code says here. Our code says each one is 32 wide and 48 high. That's all it needs to know. It already knows the length of the sheet, of the asset, the ping file. So it can figure out how many frames that is. I don't have to tell it that. So it's already going to figure out, like, okay, there's 9 frames. Okay, cool. And the other thing that's kind of nice about Phaser is it has some built-in animation support, so that you actually don't even really have to teach it how to cycle frames. It just kind of, yeah, which is kind of nice. Not every framework, not every library does that. So I just think that that's pretty cool that does it. Let me see, what else is the bare minimum before I start splatting in a bunch of code here? I think I probably... Hey, yeah, go ahead.
This is sort of off topic, Chris, right? Mm-hmm. But if I want to get started with this, yep. I need one of these sprites. Now, are there like sort of some places on the web where you can get like free, you know, sprite? Because what happens when you want to like teach people how to do some of this basic gaming? They're like, well, you need the graphics. Like it's always hard to find that stuff.
Yep. So there are a lot of places on the web that have even free graphics. This is better than it used to be. It used to be really difficult. I feel like there are a lot of folks who are sharing and making things available, and at the same time, sometimes you can buy some really cheap libraries. In fact, I don't know if you've ever heard of Humble Bundle. So Humble Bundle is a site. It's humblebundle.com. They're known for every month putting out these bundles of games and other software for a very low cost, and they also donate some of the proceeds to charity. In fact, in a lot of the cases, you can select how much of the money that you spend goes to the charity, how much goes to the developers, how much goes to Humble Bundle. And so the point is they've always been known for low-cost bundles of items. And this week, they have a Humble Bundle game asset bundle where you could pay $1 and get a bunch of assets, or you could pay more and then set your prices to get it looked like a lot of stuff. So
that's cool.
There are places to go. Yeah. So let's see if this is enough for me to get a basic game going. I've basically loaded a few things. I know I'm going to need some variables to hang on to this. So I've got my preload function. Let's make a couple variables that we're going to have Phaser hold the locations of platforms. So in order to kind of get our game started, we need that create function that I was talking about. So in the create function, Phaser is going to run preload, then it's going to run create. And one of the things I'm going to tell Phaser is I want to use your built-in physics engine. So Phaser has a built-in physics engine that will automatically do collision detection, and it'll automatically implement like a really loose gravity. And that's going to be helpful so that just so that we don't have to write it. Now, earlier, you might have seen that I snuck by here and I added another image called the sky here, and it looks like this. So let's go ahead and say to Phaser, can you just splat a sprite down? Whoops, I goofed that up. Can you just splat down this sprite here? And a sprite is a game programming term for an image, but it's a little bit more than that. Often a sprite also represents a set of animations, although in this particular case it doesn't. The sky is static in our game. So what I'm saying here is go to 0, 0 in the upper left-hand corner and put the sky down on the screen. Now, I'm actually not sure if that's enough to run this thing, because it might be exciting to kind of see it go. I don't know. Let's find out. In Visual Studio Code, there's an extension called Live Server that I like, because when I run it, it automatically... Yeah, it doesn't look like that was quite enough here because I didn't get anything. So...
Well, you did say add... Oh, okay. I mean, I trust you on this. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think that I have to... let me think.
Do you need an update?
I think that
like
update needs to be running, so...
Yeah.
But I'm not 100% sure if I have to do more to get the sky going. So, because I'm trying to remember, I'm looking at my notes here, and I wasn't going to stop this early. But one of the things I can't stand is, like, you know, I kind of want to see some code running too, right?
Oh, totally. Yeah.
So let's see if...
Maybe that'll do it.
Let's see if that's enough. Yeah. It turns out that was it, Andy. So let's bring this over here. And all we've really done is say put that sprite at 0, 0. That's all we did. We didn't do anything else. If I were to come here and make this like 100, 100, then I think what we'll see is we'll see it offset a little bit. So save it, bring that browser back and see how it's offset. Mm-hmm. And you know, it's starting 100 over 100 down, which isn't what we really want. Okay. But yeah, we kind of got started, and Phaser has automatically helped us put... I'm guessing what must have happened is it must have blown up saying, I tried to run update, it doesn't exist, so JavaScript blew up on us.
Yeah, it makes sense, right? I was expecting that.
Yeah.
Can I pop in with a quick question?
Yeah.
So create is just kind of setting things up, I think, as you said. Now, that background, granted, it's just the sky, but if it was something that was a little more foresty, something that had some images or some kind of pattern on that, is that the same mechanism you might use to make that background move? Or
I probably
is there something
wouldn't.
else that happens that does that?
Yeah, I probably wouldn't put it in create. If you were doing a movie background, then you would want to use update, imagining that every time in the loop you got to figure out where all of those pieces are. Let's say you just wanted to have trees in the background, and as the player ran to the right, the trees moved to the left, you know? Because in a typical game where your player's moving left to right, the player actually hits a point on the screen where they actually don't keep moving on the screen. But we give the player the illusion that they're still moving by starting to take everything else and move it to the left. Side scrollers have been doing that, you know, forever. So everything, you know, so yeah.
That's kind of what I'm thinking here. We've got that flat 2D side-scrolling kind of game that it sounds like we're building here. So.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do is, in order to get things moving along, here's where I do think this might be the first splat of code that we see. It's not going to be a ton, but again, one of the things that I'm doing is I am taking advantage of a feature of Phaser that allows me to create surfaces that the game will remember are solid surfaces. And remember, I made this platforms variable. It's going to hold a group of stuff. It's going to eventually contain the ground and ledges that we can jump on. So what I'm telling Phaser is, hey, I want you to remember that platforms is a group of things, and I want you to remember that they're physics objects. So enable body equals true. And then can you create one of these platforms and set it at 0 and call it and use the ground sprite that I loaded earlier. You haven't seen this yet, but use this ground sprite. And I want you to start at 0, and I want you to go down the length of the game. The height of the game minus 64. And it's like, wow, what is he doing there? Well, what I'm doing is I'm saying start at the bottom, go up 64, because that just so happens to be the height of the size of the ground sprite, and set it there. Because maybe I go later and I change this 600 to be a different value. Well, I don't want to have to change this height. I don't want to have to recalculate that. So let's see if that's enough to get a change here. Yeah, check this out. We have a platform sitting here on the ground. There's nothing that can land on it yet, so it's not super exciting. But this is the width of the sprite, and it's sitting here ready to go. Now, I'm gonna use a phaser feature here, because you might say like, oh, does that mean you've got to create sprites that are all the different widths that you need? I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. So let's use a feature of phaser that says take the ground and scale it. Make it 2 times. Well, basically, what I really want you to do is I want you to make it 2 times wide, and so that's gonna and 2 times high, and what that's gonna do there is, you'll see when I come back into the game, is now it looks like it's the ground for our game. Where a second ago it was just a little platform.
As long as it's a constant image, I mean, it'll stretch
right.
any image, right? Or
it
whatever,
will.
But
let's take a look at what that image looks like. Here it is.
Yeah.
Okay. So yes, I'm using a little bit of a trick here to kind of keep it simple, to not have to create a bunch of art. You could use other things too. Like you could use some gradients, but it would stretch the gradients. I mean, there's all kinds of things you could do. So I want to tell the phaser physics engine, this ground, this body is immovable. So in other words, if something pushes on it, don't apply physics to it. Like, don't have something bigger punch it away, because as far as I'm concerned, it's just the ground.
All the things you're saying here are obviously like hinting towards like some of the features that it can do.
Yeah.
Right. Which is that it can move things out of the way.
Yeah.
And like it's like, wow, I'm starting to see where this could go. Right.
You could use this physics engine to make another game where you turn off gravity, but you have the objects have a weight, and then let them slam into each other. Sure. I don't want to say like Breakout, but maybe kind of like a game where when you hit a brick, maybe the brick goes flying. I don't know. This isn't going to be like that. This in the game that we see, the dude's going to run around. So earlier you saw that I created a ground variable and told phaser about it, and I even told it what sprite to use and said where to put it. I'm going to do the same thing now, except I'm going to create ledges, and I'm going to say, okay, I want there to be a ledge at 400 400 and use that same ground sprite, and I want there to be another one at negative 150 250. So it's going to have the illusion that it's a shorter ledge, but it's only because I'm shoving it left off screen a little bit. And this is all just to keep it simple. And then even though it feels like I'm redefining this, it's because once I told phaser about this platform in this game, I'm never going to touch it again. So I don't care about reusing this variable. You may not want to do that. I imagine I could even probably have combined this code together and said platforms.create blah.body.immovable equals true, and I think that would have worked. Because once I create these things, I'm in this game, I'm never going to touch them again. So I don't necessarily need this to be a variable that I care about. And here are the 2 ledges. And using the magic of pushing something off screen to the left, this ledge looks shorter. I mean, it is shorter, but it's only because part of it's not visible.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm kind of using a little bit of an illusion there, right? And now for the fun part. We need the player. And so the player, I'm calling, earlier we created a player variable, and I need the player, and I'm going to say, let's add a sprite, and let's start him. This turns out that this is going to start him right on the ground, and let's use that dude sprite, and let's enable physics on the player. So enabling physics, well, that means he's going to have properties like gravity. How does gravity affect him? How much does he bounce if he's walking around? Things like that. And you can set those properties. In fact, there's way more properties than you're going to see right here. Way more properties. But we're going to give the little guy a slight bounce. And we're going to say that gravity affects him. That 300 number means that it's the acceleration that he falls at. So like 300 pixels. I think it technically is like 300 pixels per second squared or something like that. You know what you really do? You put in a number and then you play with it. That's what you really do. So even though I could get all the math perfectly right, that's not what really happens.
Right.
What really happens is you start playing with numbers and you go, okay. So, a lot going on here before we see anything else. I talked about animations. And what I'm doing here is Phaser is going to be able to figure out that there's 8 frames in that animation of the dude. I'm sorry, it's going to figure out that there's 9. And this is a cool little helper here, where I can tell it I want to declare an animation called left that is you cycling through 0, 1, 2, and 3. And I want to create an animation called right, and I want you to cycle between 5, 6, 7, 8 whenever I run that animation. So I don't have to worry about cycling the frames. I'm just going to tell Phaser, start playing the right animation now, start playing the left animation now, and you can imagine that when he's not moving, I'm going to say to Phaser, oh, just play frame number 4, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. I wish there wasn't...
This makes like perfect sense.
Well, I'm glad.
I've never done this game development before. But like, I could read that, by the way,
Okay.
before you even said what that did.
Okay.
I knew what that meant, that left, and what that right was. It just seemed so, there. Now, maybe that's the future of game. Maybe that's what game development is nowadays. I don't know if this is like a typical thing or not. But as a newbie, I feel like I can do this. This makes sense to me.
Yeah, okay. That's good. Let me see what else we need. Because, we want to see some action. And unfortunately, in order to see some action, we're going to need to get this update method going. Because right now, we're just kind of seeing setup, right? When the game runs, in fact, you're like, what's he doing down here? Well, we'll see. So we need...
so if you hit left, it won't do anything yet. Is that
yes,
what you're saying?
That's correct. If I hit game controls... nothing happens. Like I'm pushing left and right on my keyboard because we have no update function to say what to do. Right now, Phaser is running that function as many frames. I think I don't remember if this code, we can look. We might run into the code where it sets it per second, or it might just be running it as fast as possible, and it's not doing anything. So what's kind of nice is Phaser takes care of the fact that even though it's running that animation, that it's saying, yeah, I can go ahead and run this for you. Like it's just showing that. So, okay. So, I know we're gonna need this, and I don't think I declared a function called cursors because I need some way to know what's going on. So what I'm doing here is I'm saying, okay, Phaser, can you set the keyboard's cursor keys to cursors? Like I want to be able to detect what's going on when somebody's using the cursor keys. So it might seem really terse what I'm doing here, but what's kind of nice is Phaser has this built in. It says like, I will take care of reporting on the cursor keys if you call this function and take a variable to hang on to it. There are many different input methodologies that are built in. The WASD model for first-person shooters. It's just that this is the model that I need. Now, I think this is actually enough, except that we've got to have something going on in the update method. So let's see what I have to do to get that going. Remember, I was just talking about cursors. So what this is doing, I know this isn't a lot of code. Like you're like, what is it doing? This code is saying, I am going to give you this cursors variable, and you can now interrogate it to find out what's going on with the cursor keys. So in the update function, that looks like this. If cursors.left is down, and this is all Phaser, these are all Phaser objects and properties. All right, this isn't code that I wrote. Then what I want to say here is, can you add some velocity to the player and play that animation of the player moving left?
Ooh.
So that hopefully that's readable, and I think this might be enough code. I think.
I like this idea of like velocity. So you don't have to say move 10 pixels, then move 10 pixels. You have a velocity.
You can just set his
moving at a
velocity.
certain pace, right?
Yeah, yeah. So let's see if this is enough code for this to do something interesting. And I think, okay, I pushed left.
Well, he's hitting the wall now.
So the animation started playing, but I didn't write any code to stop it. I didn't write any code, right? So it's just playing. It's just, okay, whatever you say, boss.
It's not a
right?
while loop. It's a left.
Yeah. So, but hey, that's cool that we got to see something. That's what I wanted. One of the things that's always tough about game development is the amount of code you got to write just to get going. And I feel like it's nice when we can say, hey, look at that. Like we kind of, it's moving now. So what we're going to do is, since we know that if the player's moving, if the left cursor is down, we want the player to move left. Let's put an else block in here that says that if I stop, then let's stop all animation and set the frame back to 4. Remember I was talking about setting the frame back to 4? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So stop animation and play and set the player to frame forward. No more animation. We should probably put something in for turning right? If I hit the right key. So tell me how readable this all looks. Does this make sense to you? If the left cursor's down, do this. If the right cursor's down, do this. Otherwise, stand still.
Yeah.
All right.
That makes perfect sense.
Let's see how this looks. Don't worry about the fact that he's sitting there. Oh, come on. There's something that's whenever I click this. Okay, he's moving right.
Look at that.
And now I've got
small.
He's small, but here's the funny thing. When I don't touch anything, his animation keeps going. Right? Kind of neat. Well, don't worry. We'll get to that. It's because we didn't do anything to stop it. Yeah, we didn't do anything to change it, right? So it's like it's just going along. Now, okay. Let's see what's the other minimum amount of code we need to write here. Oh, I know. If we want him to stop moving, then you know what we should do? So I know, well, let me ask you, what do you think we should do for him to stop moving?
Well, what I was saying, I could be wrong, but when you do left, you set the velocity and you set to play the left.
Right.
Now, when you want him to stand still, you set animation stop, and that's the playing the left or the playing the right, but his velocity is still 150 in one of the directions. So I'm thinking you got to say velocity is x equals 0, or maybe there's a function for that.
Yeah, when he stands still, right? So, when we have a little bit of a bug later, remind me about this. Remind me that we put this here.
Okay.
Because I'm going to forget. And when I forget, I'm going to go crazy. And I'm going to be like, oh my God, I don't know what's wrong with the game. Everybody go away. Stream over. But I think what we're going to see here is that when I push to the right and now I let go, push to the left, let go. It did what you expected. One of the things we're not seeing here is we are not seeing, like, it doesn't feel like he's respecting that platform, right? I thought we did all this work for him to collide with the platform. So it turns out that physics engine that's built into Phaser, I need to tell it that go ahead and detect collision between the player and the platforms. And this is for later, but I'm gonna leave it in so I don't forget to comment it. I didn't mean to bring it in now, but I'm telling Phaser, I've told you about a player. We did that at the beginning. I told him that it was a physics object and to enable arcade physics. And I told you about a platform. And now what I want you to do is I want you to collide those things. And it's like, collide, what does that mean when it says collide? Well, let's see what Phaser does if I collide those things. What happens is, it's something about switching to this screen. There's something about it.
What happened to the background? You did something wrong, I think. You must have looked.
Yeah, I have a feeling this is a bug because stars is not. So I'm going to have to remember to comment that in. Okay.
Yeah, that was.
We didn't get to see this. I'm going to hit F5. So what happens is Phaser recognizes that he can't be here. So it automatically pushed him up, and you as the game player don't even see that happen. Then this is a little trick that I'm using, by the way, is by starting him in the wall, so to speak. Phaser immediately panics and pushes him out of the wall. And remember that bounce that I gave him? It applies that little bounce and it applies the gravity. I actually kind of like how that looks as a start.
Yeah.
This was by accident.
He's ready to go.
That was by accident. When I was writing this sample, I went, oops, and then I went, oh, genius! So it stays.
Happy accident.
Yeah. game development is very much like this. Okay, so we haven't given him a way to jump on those other platforms, right? I can't do it. There's no way to do it. So we should do something about that, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so what are we going to do? What we will do is we'll say, I'm not going to do this piecemeal. Sometime, because we've already been at this a little while. Sometimes
Beryl Krieger is asking, how do you tell them to stop in a specific spot? And
Okay.
I think the answer to that is you just stop pushing the button at this point, right?
Yeah, so what our code is doing is imagine that this update function is running as fast. This function is running as fast as Phaser can run it, although it actually might only be running at 30 frames a second, but it doesn't matter. What we're doing is we're running through these instructions every time. Every time. It's just going really fast. And it's saying, are you still pushing down? You are. Okay, we'll move him 150 to the left, and even though you're already, whether or not you're playing that left animation, play it and see how I can call this function again and again, and Phaser manages the animation smoothly for me. I don't have to be smart enough to know it's not like I'm restarting the animation. Phaser manages that, which is really cool. So it means that I can write this code, play left, and not care that it's getting called every frame that my finger is on the left cursor. Same thing with right. And if none of these cursor buttons are being pushed, then we're telling it stop animation, stop movement, and show the fourth frame. That's how it feels like it's stopping. Because we're basically telling the game framework, which is called Phaser, don't play any more animation and stop moving that player's body. So that's what's happening there. It's just you have to get used to the fact, and maybe I didn't explain this very well, is that games always run in a game loop. Update is the loop. It's going through this loop as fast as it can. And it's basically saying, okay, I'm holding right now, letting go, holding left now, letting go. But even while nothing's happening here, that loop is still running. As I'm holding right, that loop is still running. It's just doing what you say. It's like, yep, okay, 150 more, 150 more, 150 more. I added this little bit of code that said, if somebody pushes the up key, then let's set the player's Y velocity to negative 350. Let's see what that looks like. Now, there's a little bit of there's an and statement there that says not only do I have to push the up key, the player's body has to be touching a surface, because if I didn't do that, can you imagine what that player would do when I push the up button? Maybe it registered 5 frames worth of ups and he would go boo 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 boo, right? Which is a cool effect. It's just not the one we're going for.
That might be a different game.
Yeah. So watch what I've got here just by adding that Y velocity. Put it all together. X velocity is going, push the Y key, and Phaser takes care of that landing for me because I said that platform was a solid body.
Nice.
It's taking care of gravity for me. It took care of gravity. And even if I hold the up key, the second up, I'm holding the up key, holding the up key, holding the up key, and it does register a new jump when the player's touching down. So this little bit of code only runs when these two circumstances are both in play. It has to be touching the cursor key up, and the player's body has to be touching a surface.
Nice.
So that's cool. Not really much of a game. So let's...
It's getting there.
Yeah, it's getting there. And we are going to do a little bit of zooming ahead because some of this is repeat code. Okay?
Yeah.
So let's do some things. Let's come back up to the top. And I'm going to go ahead and declare a bunch more variables here that will get used later. You saw a little earlier, a little hint about the stars, and we're going to keep a score and so on. What else can we do right now? Right now we can do this. Okay, here's what we're going to do. In the create function, so we're back in creation time now. This is the stuff that you're setting up to play the game. Let me see what happens if I... Okay, that straightened it out nicely. I did Alt-Shift-F. And, now that I've declared these player animations, I kind of gave you a little bit of a hint that we're going to be adding things for him to run into. And these things are going to be stars. I'm going to need those stars in the game assets. So let me get those brought in here. Let's add it, and let's take a look at what that looks like. There's a little star. There it is. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to write some code to get those stars populated in the game world. First of all, I'm telling Phaser to make a group called stars, and this is helpful for the physics engine because now what I can do is say anytime I create a star, it's going to be a physics body. I don't have to do that on every star. I've already just told it. From now on, stars are physics bodies, which is kind of nice. Now, it turns out that the function to create the stars, I broke that out. So let's go take a look. I'm basically going to go call that now, but we've got to go write it. And I could have inlined this. This could have been in the same spot. But let's take a look at what this looks like. Function create stars. Okay. And this is going to be a for loop. And if you're used to programming, then this is pretty straightforward. But if you're new to programming, then what I'm really doing here is I'm saying count from 0 to 12. And when you get to 12, quit doing this. This is just fancy code for do this 12 times. And programmers are used to this, right? But if you're a non-programmer and you're here just because you thought it was cool to see how a game is made, then that's what we're doing here. We're saying do this 12 times. So what are we doing 12 times? We're going to create a star inside that group. We're basically going to say, okay, I want you to create a body in the stars group. I want you to take the number that you're on, multiply it by 70 and set that to the x. What does that mean? Well, 0 times 70 is 0. And then I want you to set... The next one will be 70, and the next one will be 140, and so on. And that'll basically get him to go across the screen horizontally. I want you to use the star sprite. And then I want you to start at the top of the screen. So they're all at the top. But let's give them gravity. Now, isn't it funny that you apply gravity not to the world, you apply them to the bodies? A little bit backwards, right? But that's why the platforms aren't falling down. But the player is. The star.
That way it gives you, like, you could apply, different things have different density or mass or whatever you want to call it, right? And so they would fall at different rates anyway.
That's exactly it. Yep. So what I'm doing here is I'm saying that stars fall at this 300 meters per second. It so happens to be about the same as the player. It might be 300 pixels per second. I'm not sure. Then I'm going to give the star body a bounce property. And because I wanted to give it a little bit of a nice feel, I'm throwing a random number into this equation that I just made up. Like, I tried 0.7 and I multiplied by 2. And I kind of like how this looks. And then I said, okay, cool. So that might be enough for the stars to appear. Let's see. Yeah, there's something about when I switch context here. It's making it pretty upset. So,
look at that.
It kind of worked, but something's not right, and it didn't. And I think the problem, the what's not right, is I don't actually remember. I remember bringing the star asset into our folder, and I'm saying to use it, but I don't ever remember actually declaring it. Yeah, do you remember? Yeah. So I think that was the mistake. And so Phaser's like, okay, whatever you say, boss. I don't have a star. What do you think about this placeholder junk? So let me see if I can find where it
was all the way at the top where you did that, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, I'm trying to see where in my notes I have the star added, because you're right. I would have expected stars enable body, add it to the group, the stars in the game. Maybe why isn't that working? Stars created star. Here it is. It's right in there, preload. Yeah. In preload. Thanks. So that helps me go back to my notes and say, because you know how it is you forget everything you did when you do a presentation on something, right? So we need.
I hope that our viewers, and I hope everybody's enjoying this. And I mean, we just lost like 15 people when you made that mistake. A lot of people just kind of bailed. They're like, really? He didn't put the star sprite in there or whatever. But, you know, we're hoping for a little flexibility from you guys. I hope everyone's enjoying this, and I hope people are going to be like, yeah, man, we got a couple follows. Chris, you're doing a great job. We're picking up follows because of this talk. Look at that, by the way. That is cool.
Yeah.
Now, I think the guy's going to lose. I mean, good luck winning this game as those stars are
as they just scroll by.
Down. I don't know what's going to happen here.
Yeah, well, that didn't do what we needed. So there's a little bit more we need. There's a little bit more we need, but you know, now's not a bad time to talk about. You know, we've got some folks watching on Twitch. I don't know if there's anyone watching on YouTube. I don't know, Andy, but where do you, if you came into the show late, Andy, where do you find the replay of the show?
Well, we hope you'll go over to youtube.com/thedevtalkshow and check out our YouTube channel, where you will find all of the archives, all of the old shows, all the classic episodes of the Dev Talk Show. And we've got some good stuff up there. Look, Chris is showing it on screen now with the dark background.
Yeah.
Look in the dark background on YouTube now.
That's right.
Yeah, you can see a whole bunch of stuff. We got in there Snowflake and Maui. And last week we were talking about coding jobs. How about last week's show, by the way? We got a raid last week. How cool was that?
Yep, Cyber Insecurity raided us, and we're so grateful for the 30 new followers that came from that raid, so that was pretty awesome.
That was big. That was fun.
Yeah.
So so please check us out. Check out our archives. Subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on Twitch. And, come hang out with us. We have a good time here Wednesday nights at 8:30. Eastern time, that is. 8:30 Eastern time, Wednesday nights. Come hang out with us. Share your comments, share your suggestions or comments, questions, whatever you want to do. Be a part of the show with us, or just hang out and watch. And so, Chris, what's going on here now?
Remember earlier when I said, don't let me forget when we see a bug that what I did? This is it.
Yeah.
Is that we need to uncomment this and say that stars also collide with platforms.
Oh, no way. Are they going to start bouncing around?
Right, because they have a gravity and a bounce. So the game engine is going to do that for us.
And the bounce was the part with the random, right?
A little random, and that's why every time we do this, it's going to feel like it's going to feel the same, but not the same, and which is kind of a nice feeling when you're playing a game. Is like, huh. They kind of sort of have this different bounce to all of them. Wouldn't it be great if he could go pick these things up? Except that, so we're almost there. But he can't do anything with them. So as you can probably guess, it's because we're almost to where we need to be, right? Yeah. So what we need is to detect a collision. And just like the physics engine helps us by saying, I want you to manage collisions between the players and the platforms and the stars and the platforms. Now we're going to tell it, I don't want you to manage the collision between the player and the star, but I do want you to tell me.
Yeah, I was wondering if we can I'm just guessing, can we assign a function that says when two things collide, I want you to call some method or do something else, right?
Perfect. And you know what I love about this, Andy, is have you ever written a game before?
I mean, I don't think so. Maybe 30 years ago or something like that.
Right, but you are a developer. But what I like about this is that the phaser framework is clean enough that you're already thinking ahead as to what the code must look like. And this is it. If you tell the game that I want you to detect an overlap between player and stars.
Not collide, an overlap, right? Because the two graphics pieces are overlapping, right? They're touching at some point.
When this happens, can you call collect star for me?
Yeah.
You can also do other things. You can say things like whether you want, right here, you can supply other properties. Like maybe you want it to disappear. Maybe you want to replace it with another thing, which is good for explosions, right? Replace the object with another object. But all I want to do is I want to call a function that I have not yet written. What to do when the star is collected. I haven't yet written that function. So let's write that function now. And we're going to write this. This is going to be a little bit of a splat here. And we'll go over what all of this is. So When it calls the function, it sends you the two objects that collided, the player and the star. And what I'm going to say is, okay, phaser, get rid of the star. Then, and we haven't gotten to this yet, I want you to play a sound effect. So we're going to have to go load sound effects. Then what I want you to do is I want you to update the score. Remember I set a score at the beginning? I set it to 0, in fact. So here it is. Score is 0. Then what I want you to do is I want you to update the score text, which we have not put in our HTML yet, but we'll, in fact, let me comment this out so we don't have to do that right away. I'll forget and we'll have to remember to do that later.
Oh, yeah.
Then what I want you to do is I want you to tell me which stars are still alive, and there's another function that I wrote which basically is called the stars report, which we don't need right now, not to be confused with a different report. But the purpose of the stars report is to write out to the screen how many stars are left. We don't need that right now. If what Stars Alive is doing here is it's getting the result of filtering all the stars that are still alive. If it turns out that there aren't any left, then I want to know that.
Okay. So there's this concept, there's a couple of words that are sort of like introduced here, like this alive and kill. So these are things that the game engine is kind of using this terminology, right? Like it's not alive or what. It doesn't know if this is supposed to be a physical thing that it would be a character that's a person, but it's basically saying some object that's still in the game, right? Still part of the thing. And
right.
You kill it or it's alive or something like that. And there's probably some other things that go along with that, right?
There's other states, but basically kill says, phaser, I want you to take it off the screen. I don't want you to apply physics to it anymore. It's gone.
Right.
And then this is some JavaScript code that says, well, look through stars, and I want you to find all the stars that are still left. And then what I'm doing is I'm checking to see if any are 0. I'm checking to see if the amount is 0. And if it isn't, well, I have a handy dandy function to create new stars already.
Yeah.
So that is going to, I'm sure you can guess what this is going to do. This is going to allow the game to essentially just kind of keep going, right? I do not have a sound effect ready to play, so it's going to crash, I think. I think what's going to do, it's going to crash when I try to play it. Yep. Boom.
Yeah.
So because I didn't go add that part. So what do I need to do? I need to bring in that asset, which we have not done yet. And there it is again. That's so strange. I'm not sure what's going on there. What a pain.
That beeping's making you crazy.
Oh, it is. And what I'm going to do is
I'm going to everybody in the group, we're like, we're waiting for that sound. Like we're on board with it. Don't worry.
Oh man, let me tell you, this live streaming. So let's go up to the top here, and we're going to remember in our preload is where we were generally loading assets. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add one more, and this is a new type of asset. This is not loading an image; it's loading audio. And what I'm saying is I want you to load a piece of audio. I want to call it SFX. So these are all labels that I'm applying so that I can recall them later. And they're just JavaScript strings, nothing special. And I'm telling it, I want you to first try loading this. And if that doesn't work, then try loading this. And Andy, I wonder what your question might be as to why. Well, your question might be, why am I doing that?
Well, I don't have a question. I could guess on the answer.
Okay.
Because I like to think, like, is this readable, right?
Okay.
Now, I don't know the answer. I have no actual idea.
Right.
But something tells me that there's probably an efficient way to do this and a less efficient way to do this, or like a browser supports something or doesn't support something, and maybe this FX mixdown is like not the best way to do. Because you already said it's an or. You said do this or do that.
Right. I kind of gave it away. Yeah. So it turns,
but still, it was good because it's kind of cool to see this. By the way, and it turns out, Chris, that there's a drinking game happening in the chat room. When the beeping happens, people are doing shots or something like that.
Great.
According to Ross
Good.
the Lip.
So we got to turn on the mature audience setting for the stream, right?
Right.
So what's happening here is that our browsers do not universally support the same audio formats. Many years ago, Firefox made a decision to not support MP3 because MP3 has some patents tied to it. and they just said, you know what, we're not going to use any patent encumbered technology so that later blah 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 bad stuff happens, whatever. Other browsers just don't feel it's a problem. So this is just a way, and Phaser supports this, to say, hey, try loading the OGG, and if this browser doesn't support OGG, because not all do, then load the MP3. That's all it is. And it's to help you as the developer so that you can write your game without having to write all this if-then checking code, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that's enough, actually. Let's save this, and let's see if that's enough to get some collisions here. And I don't know. I think. Oh no, it still crashed.
Still crashed.
So what did I forget? That means I forgot something. So let's.
Did you load the? Oh yeah, this is the asset.
I loaded
right?
it. I loaded it, but.
And they're in the file here. Yeah. FX
Yeah, I can see some.
down.
I can see some things that I forgot.
Okay.
I can see some things that I forgot. So let's go. Let's go.
Hey, Chris?
Let's see. Yes, go ahead.
Wasn't there that line in the update at the very end, that last else, and you said, "This is going to come back to bite me"?
Yeah, it will, and it is one of the
that's not
issues.
it yet. Okay.
It is one of the issues. In fact, no, actually, it wasn't. But so here's where it is. Here's what it is that we need to go into. We need to do more work in create. In preload, we loaded the asset. In create, we need to actually we need to add the audio, which I know sounds strange. Here I loaded the audio and I gave it a tag, but I didn't assign it a variable to be used later. Do I have to assign that variable? Well, it's going to really help me to do this. So, because now I don't have to do this every time. So in the create method, which is only run once, and it allows you to set up your game state, I'm going to say, let's add this little audio piece that I tagged SFX to a variable called SFX. A little confusing. I could call that whatever I want. I could call it Eat It Joe's. It doesn't really matter. And then I'm going to use a feature in Phaser called Allow Multiple. What does that do? I'm telling Phaser that if I start playing this audio and then I tell you to play it again, don't preempt it. Just play the effect on top of each other. Mix them. You may not realize this about games, but games have to make that decision of whether to preempt the sound or whether to mix it. I'm sorry, were you going to say that, Rich?
No, that is a good tip for a good pro tip there.
Yeah, it's just games have to make that decision. I'm sorry, I think I should have let you, because I think you were going to jump in to say it, and I feel bad that I cut you off.
It's all good.
So what else do I have to do? I have to tell it where and for how long to play. And I'm basically saying this is a key, and here's when the sound starts. It starts, I think this is like 10 milliseconds. And you can also say how long does it last. You can also set volume and whether it loops. Do you want it to play forever? Do you want it to play till you stop it? I just want it to just play it once, real quick, ping, good to go. And why do I have to set this 10? Because I think if we go play the original ping sound, the person who made this sound didn't start it immediately. So I'm kind of letting Phaser help me by saying jump ahead, which is nice. It's nice that it does that, and I didn't have to go into some editor, and cut the sound down. Right. Let's see. This is what was blowing up because I hadn't finished defining this variable SFX. So that's what was blowing up. But whenever the star is killed, go ahead and play the ping, and that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Chris, does this mean is this audio file? Is it sort of like a sprite? Like there's more than one sound in that thing, and this ping sound happens at like 10.
Yeah. That's correct in this particular case, but that doesn't have to be the reason. It could just be that maybe you want the sound to play. But you're right. Let me see if I can play this real quick so you can hear what the full. This was a case of me saying I really like this asset, but I only like part of it. So here it is. Hear that? You hear how it's different sounds? But
Awesome.
But I like that last one, that cha-ching. That's the one I wanted. So
Right.
I said, instead of me putting time in to cut the audio down, which might be the right thing to do. In fact, you know what, Andy? You're probably revealing something that I might have done it on purpose for the last time I did this talk, because what I probably wanted to talk about was what are called audio sheets or audio sprite sheets in Phaser. Phaser has this ability to you can give it a big audio file and you can define audio playing out of it, either to mix and match or to just basically say, look, I want to combine a bunch of stuff into one file. And not all game engines support that. I think that's a pretty cool Phaser feature. So what I'm telling Phaser to do is don't play that whole 18-second thing with all the little blips and bloops. I just want the thing that sounded like a cash register. And let's see if this is finally working now. So is that coming through on the stream?
Yeah, I think so. I hear it.
Right. So we are collecting stars. We're getting rewarded. When they're all gone, more stars, and we can just keep on playing.
This is pretty cool.
Yep. And what do? We took our time, and we took about an hour, and we got this game working, right? Pretty
Totally.
cool stuff.
Nice.
So,
I mean, I think this is pretty impressive. I mean, I could see where this can go. You know, like just, you know, obviously, right? Some of this stuff you can kind of see like, wow, there's a lot more to this. This is cool.
yeah. Well, I'm glad that you think so. So, I'm gonna do one more thing, and this is where I'll be happy. I'll be happy to look at the code. But this is actually the finished product, and the reason, of course, except for the fact that it didn't load. So, let's see. Is it just that I need to hit F5? No, there's more to it than that. The whole thing blew up. The whole thing blew sky high, didn't it? Don't worry, we'll get it. We're gonna get this. And I think I know what happened. I think when I was copying assets over, I moved them. I did not copy them. So
Control Z.
That's right. So let's
or
try
just
that
or just
again.
do a get from your repo, right? Which is probably where you must have another repo or something like that.
This is actually all in a repo, which I will remember to show at the end. Remember I told you there was a score, and then look, here's the great thing about developing games on the web. To me, if there's one feature that I love about it, it's that you're in a web page. And I'm sorry, there is no easier environment to just throw text on the screen than in web development. It's easier than any other platform. It's easier than writing code to put text in a certain spot here. So I just made a couple HTML spans, and then you remember earlier you saw that stars report? When we never saw what a stars report was, right? Well, the stars report is, sorry, let me make this nice and big. Here's let's see, don't I have this? Oh, you know what I did is I think I probably put it back in a function behind all this stuff. So velocity report basically says, hey, take the velocity and go print it out. Go print it out somewhere. And let me see, do I have that somewhere else? I feel like I put it in a different function or a different place. It's just all hiding, but I don't know where it is. But in any case, let's see.
Chris, because your code, I just noticed that now it says like left thumbstick. So when you were saying left and right before,
yep,
I'm sitting at a computer. I kind of assume you're using the left and right keys on the keyboard.
I am. Right now I am using the left and right keys. And as you can see, as I was developing this game, I wanted to make sure the stars thing was working. So how many stars are left? 3, 2, 1, and now 11, right? So that was like little debugging code. And it was so easy on the web because I could just write in the JavaScript. I could just say, well, go update some spans that I threw into the HTML. That was cool. Now, you asked me a great question. I'm using the keyboard, right? Well, hold on. This is an Xbox One controller. And let me see. Come on.
Is it plugged in?
It is plugged in.
You got to restart the game?
It may. No, I don't. I should not have to restart the game. At least I don't think so. But that might end up being it. You might be right about that. But I thought... Hold on. See, I set this up earlier.
Thinking what I want to do with this game next. I don't know if you've done this, but you got to have a timer that counts from like 30 seconds or a minute down to 0, and make the stars disappear after a few seconds on the ground.
Oh,
and,
yeah,
figure out how many points you can get. You know what I mean?
Right. Yep. So I had this hooked up to my PC a little while ago, and I'm wondering, I hope I don't have to reconnect it. I was gonna say it's cool. It's gonna be ready to go.
Don't worry about it.
It's fighting me because it turns out that you can use your controller in these games too. So, but for some reason it's not hooking up right now. I'm sure I could probably.
It's okay.
I could probably.
I think we believe you.
Yeah. So there's one thing that we wanted
for the rest of the audience. But I believe you.
Well, the one thing we wanted to do is we wanted to see this running on the Xbox, right?
Yeah. How in the world? I'm trying to figure out how in the world you would get this to the Xbox. Like,
yeah. So it's going to be kind of hard to talk about quickly. There's like a whole... But what I am going to do is point everybody to a fantastic YouTuber who made a better intro video on how to set up your Xbox that I felt like this is so good, there's honestly no reason to make my own. So here I am in Visual Studio. So let me tell you what you have to do this in Visual Studio. You do have to have Visual Studio. If you have a retail Xbox One or Xbox Series console, either these Xbox One, Xbox One S, Xbox One X, Xbox Series S, Xbox Series X, I've named them all, you can do this. There is a mode that you can put your Xbox in called Dev Mode. And what it does is it reboots the console into a state where you have no access to any of your games. You don't have any access to any of your storage. It's like an isolated sandbox mode. And then you use Visual Studio and you can push games into the Xbox. They do not have to be JavaScript games. They can use popular game engine platforms like Unity or Unreal. In fact, it can be anything that's written in either JavaScript, C# or C++. It just so happens those are the 3 environments that are supported, and the reason why is because this was built on top of UWP originally. And so remember when UWP was those 3 platforms, .NET, C++, and JavaScript? I have seen evidence publicly on Twitter that there is something in the works to modernize this. And the reason I say that is because the Xamarin Twitter account sent out a survey saying, have you used Xbox Dev Mode? Take our survey. And I was just thinking to myself, why would the Xamarin account ask for this, right? But that is, I want to make it clear that I am reading tea leaves, right? It was just a Twitter thing one day, and I said, well, I want to take a survey about Xbox Dev Mode. So I'm thinking that maybe this is being modernized, right?
Maybe this ties into the show, and again, we're just guessing here, but you're saying Xamarin, so now I'm thinking, well, does this mean like the Maui stuff we saw like a couple weeks ago?
I really...
maybe that's a platform you could use on here.
No idea. But what I thought was really cool was that all the code that you saw me use earlier, I was able to just bring in and create a universal Windows platform app in JavaScript, and then get that working. So let me see if we can show what that looks like.
Okay, wait, hang on.
Go ahead.
So you sort of shortcut a little bit.
Oh, so not just a little bit.
Before we were in VS Code, and it was pretty simple. It was just some HTML, some JavaScript, and some files, right?
Yep.
Now you're basically moving that to Visual Studio, which I don't know. Maybe you can even do this in VS Code. I don't know, right? And you're creating a project. That as .NET developers, we're used to that concept of like a project in there, right? And it's a UWP project?
Yes, it does have to be UWP.
And then you're taking the files, those same files you have, and just putting them in there. That's really all there is to it.
Yeah, I basically said, here's my JavaScript assets. It's kind of hard to see, but here's some of the files that we're used to. Here's index.html. Here are some of those images. And then here are the assets for the game. And then because it's a UWP project, you have like splash screens and stuff like that. But I need to set this Xbox to dev mode. So
I'm not seeing your Visual Studio, I think.
No.
Or did the stream get way behind?
I think what you're seeing is the Xbox, right? Okay.
Now I'm seeing the Xbox, but before that I wasn't seeing your Visual Studio, I don't think.
Yeah, let me get it back in there in just a second. I've got to... I thought I had this thing in dev mode already.
So you've got your Xbox connected to... This is interesting. Your Xbox is also
Xbox is rebooting.
Part of our stream.
Yeah, that's why. Remember I was telling you tonight, I'm not going to be able to share the Xbox. It's because I'm actually capturing the Xbox and I'm able to flip back and forth. But it means that I had to disconnect it from Skype, so you couldn't watch this in real time. At least the Xbox part of it, right?
Right. And then I went and asked another question about stuff. But okay, so that probably.
So here's Visual
Studio.
Here's Visual Studio, right? Now there's things you have to do. Like I said, this video that I'm going to show you does a great job. He just did a fantastic job of showing this. Is that in your project properties, you basically say that when you're debugging, you want to remote debug to a machine, and this machine name is something you set up when you're in dev mode. I think I'll be able to show it to you on your Xbox. And then you say that the authentication is this universal, because there are choices here. And I actually beat my head against the wall a little bit until I found that video, because I couldn't remember which one of these it was. And then when I saw the video, I was like, oh, that's right, it's universal. And so let's see if the Xbox is back. Okay, it's unfortunately it's flipping over to dev mode. So I think what happened was I said I want to leave this in dev mode. And either I didn't reboot the Xbox or I didn't do it, because obviously it's a startup to switch over to dev mode. So we're going to sit here and talk for a little bit. But other than that, you can see this is HTML, right? This is JavaScript. It's not that I don't think you should, if you are interested in making games for your Xbox, it's okay. Use Unity, use Unreal, use the XNA framework successor, Monogame. Use DirectX. It's okay. There's other platforms too that export to this. I think Construct 3 does. I think GameMaker does. The reason though is that because web development is accessible to a lot of people, even to non-developers, like they're kind of new. But they might, even a lot of folks who maybe say like, yeah, I'm not really a developer, but I've played around with HTML. So I really like this as like the starter. Like this gets you hooked. And then you go, yeah, I want to do this. So
yeah, I put in the chat, Chris, I'm thinking like, I feel like I could do this with my kids.
Yes, I love that.
Have a little fun, goof around. Maybe they take it a little further. But even if they don't, like our rainy day project, we could build this game that you just built. Like they've been through enough of these like kids can code kind of things. Like we do it like Tech Bash or like you've done at Philly.net and things like that. So like they get some of these concepts of like some of these basic constructs. I think they get that stuff,
right?
And so I think I could make like an afternoon out of this and then load it up on the Xbox. Now you said we go to dev mode.
Yeah.
And in dev mode, you don't have access to any of the other games.
Yes, you basically flip back and forth. Yeah.
But yeah, I'm assuming I can flip back and forth.
Yep.
Okay, good.
In fact,
I'm not bricking the Xbox.
So if you see my Xbox now, it's shared on the screen. Unfortunately, I know you guys got to look at the stream. There's an option right there to leave dev mode. When you do that, it's like getting your Xbox back.
Right.
So from here, you can do a lot of really interesting things. You could create a game, register it in a shared location, like some shared network location, and then you could tell your friends to put their Xboxes in dev mode, and all of you could play the multiplayer game together. So like you could beta test with your friends and stuff. So that's they give you the everything you need to create that sandbox to not just test your game locally, but to also test your game with your friends.
Wait, you could make a multiplayer game?
Yeah, you could. You could. In fact, you could do it with web technology.
You'd have to have a server, right, to like get the answers or something like that?
Yeah, you could make like a web server, use SignalR. You could use
Unreal. I'm just checking.
Yeah.
That's what you meant, right?
Yep.
Like, I'd have to have some kind of server. Okay.
Right. But so when it says register a game from a shared network location, let's say you had a couple friends who were willing to help you with dev mode, but they're not going to get your source code, get Visual Studio, install Visual Studio. This gives you a way to let them join you. You got to do the heavy lifting, But there's a lot of great, this amazing. This is my Xbox, and I'm in I'm in this different world, right? So let's see if this is enough. Let's go back to Visual Studio. I know I've skipped over a lot of configuration here, but let's just see if it runs. As you can see, I'm about to hit play on remote machine, and it says deploy started. And so it takes a little while, but it's working on pushing those bits down to the Xbox right now. And
wow.
I'm gonna go ahead and let's see what comes up first. We're just kind of waiting here. I'm gonna come back. It still says that it's working on it. I know these fonts are super small. I have not. One of the things I almost always do is I configure Visual Studio for presentations, and I haven't done that and use that cool presentation mode extension that Mads Christensen came up with, so you can flip back and forth. So in any case, okay, it's here it goes. It's loading it up. So let me get back to my Xbox and look at this. This is on the Xbox. Here's my controller, and one of the animations is messed up. I am controlling this game, and I think people on the stream are hearing the sound. I don't think you are, Rich and Andy. I'm not.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah.
But I'm seeing it on OBS. So this is that same project.
This is on the Xbox.
This is running on my Xbox One. I love how Halcyon Tribble says that dev dashboard looks familiar. I had no idea, Halcyon. I had no idea what it was really like to be a. I'm sorry about it being loud. Let me lower it a little bit. But this is happening on my Xbox right now. The game that we've been working on. Let me show you something else that's cool that you might blow your mind. Okay, just a second here. Let me.
But wait, there's more?
There is more. Let me touch a star, and oh no, I can't. Nothing's happening. Did the game crash? Did it crash? Look at the stars suspended in midair? Oh, I guess the game crashed. Or we're on a breakpoint in Visual Studio.
No way.
Classic Visual Studio experience where I can debug the game. I can look at the JavaScript consoles sitting down right here. Interrogate memory. What do things look like? Like what does the star structure look like? Blah 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 blah. It's your classic development experience right here in Visual Studio, debugging into my Xbox One. Pretty cool stuff, right? Dev tools for the win. So I gotta clear that breakpoint, and then the game continued. In fact, what was kind of neat was, let me see if I get if I can catch some of those things in midair here. Let's see, grab that, and that, and then set the breakpoint and catch one of those. Look, it just pauses. Everything's paused because I touched that star. Now, all of you are going to complain about the collision detection because it doesn't even look like he's touching it. But here I am. I'm on a breakpoint.
He's close enough.
Pretty neat stuff. This part, a few years ago when this came out, I created a couple games. I did some Unity stuff. I did some XNA mono game stuff, and I thought it was cool. And then I started thinking about, I can't wait to do a Philly.net presentation at CodeCamp. But I don't think I'm gonna combine teaching Unity. That's too much. There's too much going on. So I'm gonna try web. And I created a UWP JavaScript app. And I said, not only am I gonna do that, I'm gonna delete all of the code, the WinRT code. I want it to be just web code. Does that work? And when it worked, I was really excited. I said, now I think I have something that's really teachable here. And and I've hung on to this sample, and we were looking for a cool topic, and here we are. So Xbox dev mode, that's it.
This is great. I mean, like, seriously, I wasn't really sure what to expect, how complicated this was. You heard me saying these things in the beginning. I'm like, I'm waiting for you to drop like all this other stuff, and there's some magic behind. Like, this was all pretty reasonable.
Yeah.
From and I know obviously we can make this game more and more complex. We can do more and more stuff with it as we want, but Oh.
So this was 4 years ago, the morning when I got this working. I just got up and I said, I'm going to try doing Phaser as a UWP project. And my daughter Sam came down just as I was getting it working. So I said, Sam, do you want to play test our new Xbox One game? And so obviously I needed a splash screen. But here I am in my living room with an original Xbox One starting the game. And she plays it. In fact, I think I take my camera and point over just to show, like, look, she's playing this game. So that was a pretty cool time. She still remembers this too. She's like, oh, I remember when I did that. She's like, I was a kid.
Yeah, she looked young there. What year did you say?
That was about 4 years ago.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, and
so
look,
how much has this changed? Like, obviously, this demo still works and things like that,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Do you know much about the progress or changes?
Yeah, so there is a change, and it's good. I'm glad you asked that question. So UWP JavaScript projects are not supported in Visual Studio 2019. So what you saw tonight was me using Visual Studio 2017. That still works. If you do not have Visual Studio 2017, Visual Studio 2017 community is available. You just go to the Visual Studio webpage. And the only difference is that in order to get older versions of Visual Studio community, you do have to sign up for Dev Essentials, which is completely free. Just need a Microsoft account. And Dev Essentials actually gives you some other cool stuff too. If I remember correctly, you get, I think you used to get access to a few Pluralsight courses and some other introductory offers. But that's something that in order to get this running again, I tried loading it up, and when it said project not supported, I went, uh-oh. But then I'm like thinking, but wait a second, the documentation is all still there. And that's when I found out that the project type itself went away. But it is still supported in 2017. And 2017 is a supported product. Just because it's not the latest product, it's still in support. So it all still works.
Hey, how cool is this, by the way?
Yeah.
Talk about like meta or whatever you want to call it.
Right.
On your keep
Right,
screen
right.
there. On the screen,
Yeah.
there's us right there.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny. Like,
you should watch this. So we were talking about setting up your Xbox, and I actually had planned. I said, I'm going to need to make like a video or provide the instructions, and I still think it's useful. I think we'll get a one tab. I don't have it tonight. But if you go watch this video on YouTube later, down in the description, I'll make sure I put links to all these things. Or we can just, we can put them into the Twitch chat right now as well. So this is a video here. This gentleman, he made this great 15-minute video. I'm going to go ahead and play it so we don't have to see how his eyes were big. He just got an Xbox Series X, and he said, can I do Xamarin Forms with it? And over the course of this video, he sets up dev mode, he activates the account, and he connects and he debugs and he just does hello world in Xamarin Forms, and Xamarin Forms writes out to UWP Windows, so it works on the Xbox, right? That's one of its targets, is Windows UWP. So that's what this video is. I don't know how to say his last name, Gerald versus Luis. I'm probably getting that wrong, but I did let him know in a comment that I appreciated that he had this starter video, and there's no need for me to make one because it is about the perfect length and the perfect explanation. Does a great job. So I would say make sure you check that out.
Hey, we got a follow here from Football Talk with Benny. Now, I don't know if Football Talk with Benny is still out there listening, but I know who Football Talk with Benny is.
Yeah, he has a YouTube show. Doesn't this?
Yeah, very popular YouTube show. But the point I'm trying to say is if Football Talk with Benny is still listening, and Football Talk with Benny might have watched this whole show, but I have a feeling maybe didn't. But hey, here's Football Talk. That's my son Benny, by the way. But my point is, if he's still listening, we got to try this out. I think we could have some fun writing games for the Xbox ourselves with this. Yeah, my son's got this show. He's been putting out content.
He's going to pass us in subscribers pretty soon.
I know, he's got 89. He's been doing this for like 2 weeks, I think, and he's been churning out content. If your kids are into football and they really like talking like the stats and all that kind of stuff, it might be cool for them to hear about that from like another kid. I mean, he's a teenager, as opposed to listening to adults. Have your kids tune in and he talks about all kinds of stuff with football, NFL football. He loves it. He's
great.
Crazy. And you notice did you see the art? You guys never noticed that before.
No,
new artwork.
I like that.
You recognize that?
Well, does this
it's similar to?
Is this the same
art I have?
Is it the same gentleman that made that
Geek.
avatar? Okay.
Yeah, Reverend Geek makes those, and he's awesome. So
yeah, he also has thumbnails in front of all his videos, which is a very good YouTube tip. You can see that we're not quite there, but
we have most of them.
But if you're interested in the Dev Talk Show, please hit that red subscribe button, whether you're watching live on Twitch or you're watching in the future on YouTube. And hopefully this was fun. I hope you guys had fun.
It was definitely fun.
Yeah, cool.
This was totally cool.
Yeah, so games.
I feel like this lived up to like you set a certain expectation. This is something we can do. Like this isn't too much, and I think it lives up to that. I mean, you made a game for an Xbox in an hour, plus.
Yeah, we took a little time. I think we have some Xbox developers in the chat. I hope that it lives up to their specific. What do I want to say? I didn't want to say expectations, quality. Maybe you should try it. I only say that because I know a few people in the chat here who I won't call them out, but I'm glad you came. I really think it's cool that you came to check this out because I'm no Xbox developer, but I certainly think it would be fun to make games. I mean, for luck, I have my Halo 2 shirt. That was for luck, and we got it. We got through it.
Excellent. Well done, Chris.
Well done.
Do we have any announcements or anything like that coming up? What's coming on? What are we up to?
So next week is the 10th of March 2021, and you know what that means. That means at 8:30 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time, we will be here talking about a topic.
A topic to be determined, apparently.
Yeah, we don't have it this time. We had a pretty good streak there of saying we know what we're doing next week, but all things must come to an end, and we'll have to huddle up a little bit. But we have a lot of good ideas. I think some of the things we've been talking about are great ideas, and some of the folks that joined us last week gave us a lot of good ideas, and so they all went onto the list. So next time I'll probably have a shave too, because you can see that didn't happen today.
Look at this. This is really getting bad here. I mean, my sides are this is 3 weeks on the sides here, I think.
Yeah.
2 weeks.
All right. Well,
right.
So I guess probably good to say, if you're looking for where the rest of those new shows come out as we come up with those topics, you'll see them up there on the Meetup site.
Yep.
Be able to catch all of those there. Go ahead and check out all the YouTube for the archives, and be able to push those. That didn't go, did it? Darn. I was trying to be all smooth and push. There we go. And then don't forget to follow us up on Twitter to make sure that you stay in tune when we go live and can join us here.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I think that's about it, huh?
I think
that's a show.
All right, cool. All right, who's gonna take us out?
Yeah, Rich, you want to take us out? Come on, Rich.
Go for it, Andy. You brought us in. You take us out.
I realized I was throwing it back to Chris, and I realized he's waiting for us. So listen, thanks so much for being here. Thanks for participating and making this the kind of community we want it to be, and we really enjoy the comments and the kidding around with the audience and things like that. Thanks for putting up with some of our messes and us just trying to figure this out. Big thanks to Chris for putting together a rock solid demo tonight. This was really great. And we will see you next week on the Dev Talk Show.